We ended the last episode with this gorgeous piece, Biaute que tout votre père, because it's a lovely tune. It nicely showcased changes in prolation mid-piece, and in this case brought in the added bonus of creating a lovely syncopated groove. Those 4 prolations were such a landmark in music notation and in music history that it's worth doing a quick refresher on how they worked before we begin. But first, let's remind ourselves how this jam would have sounded. By the way, check out this long melisma here.
You can think of a melisma as a kind of syllable with an attitude. Most syllables get 1 note, 2 if they're lucky, but this one is going to carry all those notes. And so, we've seen and understood, yes we did, the alterations brought about by the changes in prolation. Call them changes in time signature, no one's going to take offense. They were road mapped with these 4 symbols. Perfect, imperfect, minor and major, mix and match. Here are the corresponding recommended time signatures. If you are in a hurry, you could slash the symbols. Now everything is double time. The beat is no longer rooted to the semibreve, but now it's rooted to the brevis. And what do we still see on scores with this symbol? Alla breve. Alla brevis, to the breve. As you can see here on the finale of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3. But let's go back to Biaute for just a second. You may think that these changes in prolation are as easy as changing time signature mid-piece like we can easily do these days. Ha! I dare you try these with most notation software. Well, at least I couldn't crack it. It's easy to change it for all voices, yes, but look what happens when you try to change for just one voice.
You can only do it by using my favorite method, brute force, scissors, or in this case, Photoshop.
In this final episode, we will add a splash of color, bridge into printed notated scores, and capture the final, unmistakable lineup of all note shapes we know today. We have to wrap this prolation business, but we should do it on a high note. And there's no better piece for that than Misa Prolationis by Johannes Hockenen, a prolation canon masterpiece that has been rightfully called the most extraordinary contrapuntal achievement of the 15th century.
In the first Kyrie of this Mass, both upper voices, soprano and alto, sing the same notated line. Nothing special at first sight, you may rightfully remark, but look closely. There are 2 prolation symbols at the start of the score. It's like having these on a modern piece. So one voice will be reading it as tempus imperfectum and the other as tempus perfectum. The 2 lower voices have a similar coupling. Each of the 4 voices thus starts the piece in a different mensuration, leading to different bar lengths in the modern transcription. Keep those scissors handy. While everyone's still on the first note, every voice slowly shifts, developing into a beautiful double canon. Look at those bar lines. Not a single one lines up. What a gorgeous sight.
Here's a quick, hopefully YouTube-sanctioned peek at how it sounds. Now let's examine the score of Philippe de Vitrie's motet Carit Gallus. Look at his notes.
Black, 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 red, red. What? All these because red ink was on a 2-for-1 offer that week. Who knows? Well, not quite.
It was only a question of time before someone decided to expand our musical horizons by making use of their favorite toxic pigment. How? By signaling a change in time signature and, consequently, note duration with the use of color. Red for now. Quick side note, Red pigment, minium, was made by roasting white lead. Roasted lead. Side note on the side note, minium comes from the Minho region.
Minho, Minius, to the Romans, is this river here between Portugal and Spain and the location of important Roman mines extracting this mineral.
Final side note on the side note of the side note, this red pigment was used in particular to draw capital letters, paragraph signs, headings, versals, and the Latin word for this kind of work to apply minium was miniare.
These medieval artists also made small illustrations and decorative drawings in the manuscripts, which became known as miniatures. Today, this word still means small works of art.
As with any of these changes, they took ages to spread and were not always accepted. So there would have been a great deal of confused singers wondering if they'd gotten lucky with the mushrooms at lunch. By the way, red was used to indicate that the notes were now imperfect, by someone deciding to troll the Communist Party.
Now let's check out a couple of pieces showing this in action. By the way, I highly recommend this book for anyone interested in historical notation, especially from the Renaissance period. It's absolutely packed with beautiful facsimiles from that period. So, why wouldn't you bother with red on this piece? Remember that this C shape, the one that eventually gave us the common time, meant that all this lot was going to be imperfect anyway. So, they are already red, but just on the inside. Here is Garrett Gallus again. Look at his lungs. The black one is worth 3 breves, a perfection, but the red one only 2 breves. I know I've just mentioned a perfection, but it's worth pointing out that since the end of the last episode, we've been moving further and further away from the influence of the church. Look at this fella here making a rare appearance. Can you guess what it is? A flat. And those lines are rests. Also worth remembering that these ligatures, although of different lengths, are read by the start and end notes only.
Good old Philip de Vitry also reinvented the way you could use the dot. And that's as far as I'm going to talk about it. But you should look it up, it gets pretty crazy. And now we introduce the most important dilemma on any healthy meal. Yes, if you've been following this series, you would have guessed that just mixing red into the notation system wasn't complicated enough for this lot. To avoid any confusion, red means the notes were red, but white just means the notes were hollow. It's still called white notation though. Couple of things to keep in mind, and the main reason why I won't be going too far down this rabbit hole: the use of color did not always cause the same alterations. If you're surprised by this, then you haven't been paying attention to this series.
To begin with, black notes were the normal ones, red or hollow notes were the altered versions. Then, at some point, the ones in black were now the altered ones. Also, adding to the confusion, another thing to keep in mind was that these same colors would obviously translate into different modern notation depending if the original notes were perfect or imperfect.
Well, that's tricky, but not impossible, you might still be thinking. Why did he chicken out of going too far into this? Surely it was only a question of black and white and red. Yes, it was, but not the way you and I know it. Look at this nonsense.
What do you call these notes? White, black, white, black, white, black, what the? Yes, black was white and white was black. At the same time, white was white and black was black. I'm so gutted I can't find whatever was these guys were drinking back then. Anyway, as we've established by now, coloration was employed to indicate certain changes in note values and rhythm. The main rules were blackened notes lose a third of its value and blackened notes were always imperfect. 2 minutes ago I told you that red meant the notes were imperfect and black were perfect. I didn't make a mistake then, nor did I make a mistake now. It's that bad. But it gets better. They also had half coloration. Of course they did. which was applied to two-note ligatures or to single long notes. Well, at least it looks pretty.
Let's now take a look at one final piece to make it a bit less confusing. Yes, we both know that I'm lying, but stick around.
Side note, this kind of artsy stuff is called eye music. No, not that. Yeah, pretty much graphical features on music scores visible only to the performers. All this extra work so that two blokes in the choir would go. On this piece, the chanson Belle Bonne Sage by Bourg-Cordy, the red notes take a diminution of 2/3 while the white notes take a diminution of half, so two breves would fit in the space of one. Originally, all notes were written in solid filled-in form, what we call black notation. In the mid-15th century, scribes began to use hollow note shapes, white notation, reserving black shapes only for the smallest note values. This development was probably motivated by the change from parchment, animal skin, to paper as the most common writing material. Paper was a lot less suited to hold large blobs of ink. Plus, it's a lot faster to leave notes hollow, and you also save on ink. What's not to like? The white minstrel notation embraces the period from the middle of the 15th to the late 16th centuries. The notes used in white minstrel notation are the maxima, the longa, a brevis, semibrevis, minima, seminima, the fusa,
the dreaded fusa,
and the semifusa. And we've pretty much reached final destination on note shapes. I know these are still missing, but doesn't matter. I look forward to your comments.
Just for kicks, sometimes they'd put in hollow and black versions on the same composition. And they would mean the same value. Yes, trolling performers was an exquisite art back then. I can't leave you without a brief mention to this strange little creature, the Semibreve caudata. Cauda means tail. So it's a semibreve with a downward or upward tail, plus other characteristics designed to indicate different values, within the realm of small notes, obviously. As expected, there is a great deal of confusion regarding the resulting note value. So we move on straight away. Although it's worth mentioning here that this is very much a post-echo of Frankov-Cologne's idea that you should recognize a note's duration by its shape. Clearly, that concept has now been pushed way too far.
We haven't seen technology-influenced music notation since episode 2, when we talked about how writing with a square nib very likely forced the evolution from those squiggly lines into the square note. Despite being beyond the timeline of this series, I'd like to show you another way that technology is going to influence the way we write music today.
Stems used to lay either side of the round blob, both up and down. Why do they now show up as a mirror image? Gutenberg and the printing press. The stem, originally in the middle, ended up on either side in handwritten manuscripts. So someone had to bring in a bit of order to reduce the number of pieces of type needed. It was mad enough to recreate a populated music stuff with tiny printing blocks. The printers, much like Steve Jobs and Apple when they decided to ditch the floppy and CD drives or the USB ports, forced the hoi polloi to adapt to their new gospel. And this way, only one woodblock design is sufficient, as it can be inverted. And it's finally time to wrap this series. Let's look back at this crazy road with a summary of the notations briefly introduced in these episodes. As you can imagine, with such a convoluted story, this table is a bit of a compromise, and obviously debated by some scholars, but whatever is not. Nevertheless, it will help us take one final look at the big picture.
Thank you for sticking with me on this 5-episode journey. Goodbye.